On Finding a Small Fly Crushed in a Book by Charles Tennyson Turner appeared in the 1873 collection Sonnets, Lyrics and Translations. Turner was the elder brother of the much more famous Victorian poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, having only taken the surname Turner as a condition for coming into his inheritance of the estate of his great-uncle, the Reverend Samuel Turner, in 1835 at the age of 27. This poem is just one of the nearly 350 sonnets that he wrote over the course of his lifetime, which had wide-ranging subject matter from great national events down to the observation of a small bee in his window. This sonnet takes the form of an apostrophe, which is where the speaker addresses an entity which is unable to respond for some reason, such as a person who is either absent or dead, an animal, such as in Percy Bysshe Shelley's Ode to a Skylark, or an abstract idea, such as in John Donne's Death, Be Not Proud. In this poem, Turner directly addresses a dead fly that has some time previously been unwittingly crushed between the pages of a book. Written some 6 years before his death, he uses this chance discovery to explore themes of mortality and memory. The act of finding the fly and the writing of the poem serve as a memento mori, something that reminds us that we all shall die, irrespective of our place in society or the number of possessions we have. Death, he reflects, strikes all of us inevitably and arbitrarily, i.e., we live with the certainty that we shall die, but also with the uncertainty of not knowing when or where or how. The fly, he argues, in the form of its crushed yet still iridescent wings has, even so, left behind a beautiful monument to its innocent life. He muses that when the book of our own lives unexpectedly closes on us, we may not leave behind such a shining legacy. The poem follows the form of an English or Shakespearean sonnet and consists of 14 lines written in a bass meter of iambic pentameter, didum, 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 didum. Turner makes hardly any substitutions of other metrical feet, although there is a noticeable trochee, thumdi, at the beginning of line 5. This lack of deviation from the bass meter ensures that the poem has a very regular rhythm. The rhyme scheme of A, B, B, A, C, D, D, C, E, F, G, G divides the poem into 3 quatrains and a rhyming couplet, and consists entirely of masculine or single rhymes, where the rhyme is located on the final stressed syllable of the line. And Turner does not deviate from this at all, i.e., he does not employ alternative rhyming techniques such as half rhymes or para-rhymes, for example. Most lines are end-stopped, with only 2 instances of enjambment to be found in the transitions between lines 7 and 8 and lines 11 and 12, which Turner uses to enhance his meaning, although he does make more use of the technique of caesura, where a pause is introduced somewhere in the middle of a line. The cumulative effect of all of these elements is that of a poem with a restrained feel and a very sombre, yet tender, tone, all of which suit its subject matter. Turner's diction is also fairly plain and simple, and features a preponderance of words with only 1 syllable. He writes in the present tense, which gives his words a sense of immediacy as he takes us through the experience of finding the dead insect, and what it makes him think about, as it happens. He makes use of metaphor to explore his themes, most notably in the idea of the literal fly crushed in a closing book, which develops into the metaphor of the book as the story of our lives, which is closed upon us abruptly and without warning when we die. Any instances there are of alliteration are subtle, such as in hand, hurt. pages pent, day by day, and leave no lustre. And because the poet uses the archaic forms of the words you and your to address the fly, i.e. thou, thee and thine, which were used in much the same way as the French used the words tu, toi and ton to address someone intimately, a resulting alliteration of heavy voiced the sounds predominates. Overall, there also seem to be more words featuring long vowel sounds as opposed to short, as in has crushed thee here between these pages pent, which also add to the poem's very sombre and downbeat tone. Shakespearean sonnets have a volta, which is a shift or turn in the focus of the poet's thoughts or arguments, often providing some kind of resolution, that usually occurs immediately before the rhyming couplet, and is often signalled by the coordinating conjunction but. Much of this sonnet explores the way in which our fate is similar to that of the fly. One day the book of life is going to unceremoniously slam shut and crush us too within its pages. Turner's volta, also signalled by the word but, is premature, however, occurring as it does midway through line 12 rather than at its end, as he concludes that where we differ from the fly is that not all of us may be as lucky to leave behind such a glowing record of our existence as it has been. The way in which the volta happens unexpectedly 4 syllables earlier than convention would dictate is perhaps a subtle nod to the random nature of the timing of our deaths. The title, On Finding a Small Fly Crushed in a Book, puts the poem into its context and communicates to the reader the experience which inspired Turner to write it. The seemingly trivial occurrence of finding a squashed insect is the stimulus which leads the poet to ponder some of life's biggest questions. The poem begins with the poet directly addressing the squashed fly. He is genuinely distressed that some hand that never meant to do thee hurt has crushed thee here between these pages pent. Here he stresses that the fly was killed purely by accident and without malice, with the use of the vague determiner some and the synecdoche hand, which suggests it's acting independently of the rest of the person's body, serving to distance the action from the intent of the individual responsible, perhaps even the poet himself if it's his own book. Note how he introduces a caesura, only 2 syllables from the start of the line, forcing a pause before the poem has properly begun to insist that the person presumably attached to the hand in question never meant to do thee hurt. The archaic adjective pent means trapped, and the way in which Turner, using a technique called anastrophe, has placed it on the end of the line in order to rhyme it with the word monument at the end of line 3, can make it slightly difficult for the modern reader to understand. If we place it where it would naturally occur in modern syntax, it would read, has crushed you here, trapped between these pages. The tone of these lines is immediately downbeat. Long vowel sounds predominate to create a heavy feel, enhanced by the alliteration of hand and hurt, picked up in here in the next line. The plosive alliteration of pages pent, and the interweaved consonants of the n, d, and t sounds. His distress is somewhat eased, however, by the discovery that even so, thou hast left thine own fair monument, thy wings gleam out and tell me what thou wert. The wings of the insect have remained intact, their iridescent elegance still gleaming out or catching the light to create the fly's own fair monument, or beautiful memorial to its life, which is able to identify its essence to Turner. The second quatrain begins with the exclamation, "Oh, that the memories which survive us here were half as lovely as these wings of thine. Note that memories should be read as having 2 rather than 3 syllables, as in memories, in order to sustain the iambic metre, and that where is just an alternative spelling for the verb were. Here Turner briefly disrupts the metre with the substitution of a trochee, dumdy, at the beginning of the line. Oh, that, as he signals that his train of thought has moved on to the implications that this discovery has for an understanding of our own lives and legacies. If only, he muses, we were able to leave memories of ourselves behind which were half as beautiful as these shiny wings. They are, he continues, pure relics of a blameless life that shine now thou art gone. A relic is an object that has survived from an earlier time, and the adjectives pure and blameless stress the fly's innocence and innate goodness. Note Turner's first use of enjambment in the sonnet that, uncharacteristically, carries the meaning of the line over to the next without pause, perhaps suggesting through the poem's form the way in which the wings continue to shine even now that the fly is gone. The rest of this line is interrupted by a caesura, the full stop pulling the reader up sharply, as he now goes on to explicitly muse over the idea of our mortality, a curse or perhaps a luxury, depending upon how you see it, not afforded to the fly, who has, of course, no concept of death. Our doom is ever near, the peril is beside us day by day. Our annihilation is always close by, not necessarily in time, but ever in the back of our minds. This may appear as melodramatically morbid to the modern reader, but we mustn't forget that the Victorians were obsessed with death. They were surrounded by it, for one thing. Without the modern medicine we enjoy today, lifespans were, on average, half what they are now. Infant mortality rates were sky high, and many people died at home in front of family and friends who bore witness to these events with alarming regularity. It was also, during the 19th century, triggered by Queen Victoria's loss of her own husband, Prince Albert, at a very young age, and her insistence on publicly mourning him for the next 40 years of her life, that elaborate funeral and mourning practices were invented. It's not surprising, then, that Turner felt the peril that is death beside us day by day. The subtle personification here suggesting a close and faithful companion that won't leave our side, especially if we consider that he was 63 when he wrote the poem, and so was very long-lived for someone of his era. He continues, the book will close upon us, it may be, just as we lift ourselves to soar away upon the summer airs. The book has now become metaphorical. It's closing the moment of our death, which may occur when we expect it the least, at a moment of pure happiness. He imagines the fly's final moments before it was unceremoniously squashed, just as it was about to soar away upon the summer airs, or fly away, presumably out of an open window into the warm breeze of a summer's day. Note the subtle sibilant alliteration here in soar and summer, and the second and final instance of enjambment, both techniques combining to amplify the sense of movement and freedom that are suddenly denied to the fly. The sonnet's volta recurs here after another caesura, which abruptly cuts the line off before its natural end in perhaps another example of form reflecting meaning. Turner now switches his attention to the way in which we differ from the fly by introducing his final sentence with the coordinating conjunction but. But, unlike thee, the closing book may stop our vital breath, yet leave no lustre on our page of death. The word lustre means shimmer or sheen, and refers to the shine that has been left behind by the fly's wings. The alliteration of the liquid l sounds in leave and lustre, lingering in our ears as the sight lingers on in the poet's mind. In other words, it's possible that, in contrast to the fly, we may die without leaving such a glowing legacy behind us. The poem can perhaps therefore be read not only as a memento mori, but also as a lesson for us to lead our lives, conscious of how we may be memorialised. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques, and English literature texts.